Hello guys, and welcome to the last chapter of the course, or at least the last chapter there isn't a bonus. In this chapter, I'm going to be talking about storytelling. I'll be talking about comic formats towards the end, but these first two videos will focus more on how you can put as much storytelling into as little as possible. So it's not about creating a full comic yet. This can be done through a single picture or a small set of pictures, for instance. For this particular video, it's about a single image. One thing that I've noticed with some artists online is that they have a substantial artistic output, but tend to limit themselves to creating characters without background or context, often not up to anything special. Don't get me wrong, I don't find this a bad thing at all, and I do love a lot of instances of such work. But for every instance of that, there's potential for adding some more into it, making it hint at a scene or a backstory, or just an additional hook to grab one's attention. Though that shouldn't be the focus, in particular if you're aiming to get social media engagement, it's a good idea to think about how to get the most out of each picture, without necessarily changing its core. Adding some context can make your work stand out and hook people in more lasting ways. That's mostly what this video is about. It's not going to be super technical, it's just going to be about, again, the thought process behind creating an image but giving it a story, even if it's just a sketch. Creating this reminded me of things like Picross or character makers, where you start with a generic empty base and build the character and their surroundings up from there. In this case, the base would be our character idea or the original sketch. And from there, we can add elements, lighting, background, etc., and do it while thinking about a story behind them. Because I want to exemplify how even a simple headshot can work for this, I have pretty much the simplest composition you can have, a front-facing character with a somewhat neutral expression and stance. Sure, this wouldn't necessarily be a bad drawing as it is, but I'm going to go in and add things to see how interesting I can make it. Worth noting that my perspective on this is biased, as I'm somebody who rarely draws anything without context. The context can be as simple as just inspiration from background, or as complex as a fully written, pre-existing scene, but it's rare for me to draw bare original characters for the sake of drawing them. I've got two different examples created from the same base, as a quick exercise to try and get as many story elements into the same base as I can and make it a completely different context. Another thing that I want to point out before I get into it is that these are sketches, so it was extremely easy to add details, to add a background, etc. And I understand that a lot of the time people don't create a context around their work due to constraints like lack of time or energy to think about and work on it. My personal take on this is that a sketch with some story is better than a fully rendered image that's just pretty. People will generally feel a stronger connection to it if there's a story behind it, even if the work itself isn't too polished. So if there's a time constraint and I have to choose between painting something or sketching something that has more storytelling value and leaving it at sketch, I will generally go with the latter. It's okay to just leave things as a sketch, black and white, or maybe even just clean up or render certain parts of it, like just the character for instance. Feel free to interpret this however you want. I'm merely talking in terms of shape and elements, not in terms of how rendered or how clean the final product might be, as you'll see. So here's my very simple base. I'm going to show you what I did for the first example ordered in steps. The first step is just the base for the character. Second step is what the character is wearing, what their hair is arranged like, what the basic elements present in any picture with them would be, and it's all decided beforehand. For no particular reason, I made their hair be kind of soaked, despite not knowing where I wanted the drawing to go. The idea was just to have this set in some sort of scene, with no particular thing in mind. Third step is one that I quite like. It isn't just about adding details to the character, but about putting thought into why the details are there and what they could tell you about the character or scene. I do this a lot for characters, even in the comic, whether it be through adding objects, scars, etc. In this case, I added a necklace with a key and some bandages. Things like the bandages and the hair hint at recent events and are temporary enough that they don't necessarily hint at the character's story in itself. Something like the key necklace, however, might hint at some permanent aspect of their story, life, antics, etc. Clothing and accessories can be derived from aesthetics alone, but you can use them on purpose to create curiosity or intrigue around something, be it by making them stand out on their own or relative to their backdrop. This key, for instance, is the sort of detail you could have a meaning imbued into. The idea here is similar to what I mentioned in the character design chapter, of trying to think of story-related reasons for certain elements to be present. It can be subtle, but sometimes it's the difference between having a character come across as a one-time design or one you've invested more thought into and will be a recurring theme in the future. It's just that little extra bit of depth. So essentially the third step would be the elements this character would carry and why, what additional things can I give them that hint towards either an immediate story or a backstory, etc, etc. Fourth step would be the background. The background added here was pretty random, just a telephone cabin. Again, I had no context for this other than knowing they'd probably be outside, maybe it's raining, maybe they're standing next or close to something. A telephone cabin came to mind as something that might make the setting more interesting, rather than just a fully blurred background or something more discreet like a house or a wall. Besides, this way I get to hint at more aspects of the supposed story behind it. Maybe it has to do with the character or the scene, maybe the location is relevant, etc. The fifth step was just about adding some shading, or rather some value to set some more mood. This could also be the step to add color if you want to add color, even if it's just something quick, or to adjust the background if you've got a predefined one. Everything that influences composition can influence storytelling, and value and color are no exceptions. This is my set of steps for working a story into a picture. Of course, most of the time, the picture itself is a product of a scene or story that I've thought about beforehand, so I don't need to think too hard in any of these steps. But keeping it as a pipeline of sorts might help you identify what elements you can change in your idea or picture to best convey the story you want. Think of it in motion, with background noise, sound or dialogue, and try to see how it could complement that image in your head better. I'll admit that I'm not entirely sure if what I'm saying is very obvious or just flat out useless to you at this point. I've had people ask me how I decide on composition, colors, and pretty much everything about a drawing, and how I make them look cinematic, and this is essentially it. There's no formula other than just some brain power put into the planning stage of a drawing. Besides, I just feel more motivated to work on certain details if I'm aware that they've got meaning behind them, either for the character, for the scene or story that they're inserted into. Just to show you how the same process can have two different outcomes, or tell two different stories, I'm taking the base again and applying the same steps but with different elements. Step 2. Hair and basic clothing. Step 3. Some details. Step 4. Background or context. For this one, I made it a painting or a mirror reflection, and I added some ripped wallpaper for additional context clues and dramatic effect. And then step 5, just some quick ominous lighting. So yeah, this is how I'd go about it. It's a personal take, but I think context is important when drawing anything that's not just a pure art study or a character reference. Not just for the sake of conveying a message or a vibe to whoever you show it to, but for the sake of being engaged with the drawing itself, and any future work related to it. If you're interested in not only drawing other people's attention to your work, but also having them come back for more, this is one step towards it. I'll talk more about this in the bonus chapter. Although not demonstrated here, multiple characters in the scene can also be used as storytelling devices. This once again ties in with the composition talk from a couple of chapters ago, in terms of where characters are placed, what they're looking at, what parts of them are in focus, and so on. The way I think about it is this. If this was a movie or some animated sequence, which parts would I want to pause and take a screenshot of? Assuming, of course, that there's a scene in mind before drawing is started, what moment would be more remarkable of that scene? The best part is that you don't even need a big level of polish to make things look interesting, or even full color. A sketch is often enough to convey a certain energy and story, and you'll see that that's the case for comics and sequential art as well in the next couple of videos. And that's all I've got for this video. In the next video, we'll be looking at the progression of this sequential art. See you then!